Hello everyone, the Nerdy Steve here, and today we will be featuring a mono blue standard deck. A link to the deck list is in the description below. I'll be talking about the overall gameplay, some of the cards, and a little bit about the sideboard, and then we'll play a couple of matches. So let's go. Ideally, mono blue plays very similarly to previous mono white lists I've talked about, in that you want to get very early on the board with aggressive creatures and then be able to control the late game. But instead of delaying your opponent's cards, maybe with Dahlia or Elite Spellcaster, as in mono white, in mono blue, you're going to be countering what your opponent does with Jwari Disruption or Essence Capture or your other counter magic. And how that really functions is that it makes mono blue a little harder to play, in that because you're a less aggressive deck and a more reactive deck, you kind of really have to learn to pick and choose what spells you're going to counter or how reactive you really need to be. Do you want to slip out the back your own creature to give it a +1/+1 counter to help speed up your clock? Or do you want to use it aggressively to remove a blocker, which might also increase your clock in a different way? Or do you want to save it to be very reactive to counter a removal spell from your opponent, right? So there are a lot of very different things you could do, and so let's talk about it a little further. But that's something to keep in mind with this mono blue list. So we have Ascendant Spirit, and this is kind of one of the cards that is really indicative of how this deck functions, right? So you play Ascendant Spirit for 1 mana on turn 1. And from that point on, you can then pay 2 snow mana to activate its ability, and then 3 and 4 snow mana down the line. And one of the interesting things about Ascendant Spirit, let's say you cast on turn 1, and then you attack with it on turn 2, and your opponent has no blockers. Do you activate the Ascendant Spirit to deal 2 damage, or do you not do anything and wait? And that seems like a very simple question. Oh, why wouldn't you just pay the 2 blue mana, or 2 snow mana, to deal an extra damage? Well, if you're tapping out for Ascendant Spirit during your turn, it means you're not holding up any counter magic for what your opponent does. And then also, continuously, if you want to pump up, if you go, okay, you know what, I'll wait to use Ascendant Spirit, and so then you wait until your opponent's end of turn to potentially activate it. But your opponent didn't activate anything or cast any spells, and they have all their mana untapped. Do you tap out for your own Ascendant Spirit to activate it up? Or do you keep up your counter magic or interactive spells? And it's going to be a very case-by-case basis in what you do and how you go with the game. But it is something that, until you play the deck a lot of times, it's not something you really understand fully how to navigate the different games. So Ascendant Spirit's just a really hard card to use very correctly. And that's something to keep in mind as you're playing the deck. It gives you a lot of agency in how and when to do things with your mana, but part of that agency comes with the ability to make a lot of mistakes, right? So we have that. We have Delver's Secrets, which is possibly one of the most powerful cards in deck. So unlike with Ascendant Spirit, right? You play Delver's Secrets on turn 1, and then if it flips on turn 2, now you have a very quick clock where you get to keep all of your mana up, and it forces your opponent to have to interact with it. And it's really hard because it's a 1 mana card that gets there right away, and you have all of your mana available now to defend it, right? And then we also have Spectral Adversary, which is a very interesting card. Spectral Adversary is, again, another card that you can cast on turn 2. You ideally want to flash it at the end of your opponent's turn, right? Or you can flash it in to block creatures and pump it up to make it big, to save maybe a Delver Secret from removal. But Spectral Adversary also has a very specific interaction with the Kamigawa sagas. So if your opponent goes to put a counter on a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, is probably the one you're most going to see. On the third stage of Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and in response, you flash in Spectral Adversary and pay the 2 mana. Spectral Adversary can phase out enchantments. So if you phase out Fable of the Mirror Breaker in response to the trigger, so the third counter is already on it, but the triggered ability to flip the saga is still on the stack, you can phase out the Spectral Adversary, and when it phases back in, nothing happens. So they are stuck with a enchantment that's not going to do anything for them. And that's part of what makes Spectral Adversary really, really good. Kiki Jiki is played so much in Standard, and this is a way to combat it a little bit. And then we also have, again, a lot of more counter magic. We have instant speed draw that can, discard maybe spell pierce if it's too late in the game to counter stuff and you're looking something more proactive. And then we also have Dreamshackle Geist here, which is a way to control the board a little bit. Maybe you need to tap down blockers so you can go get through with your attackers for lethal, or it makes your opponent have to commit a lot more to the board to be able to get through to you, and hopefully in the meantime you can kill them. And then we also have the sideboard, which is going to follow the same idea of the main deck. You're going to want to add in cards. I mean, obviously what sideboarding is. You're going to want to add in cards that are good against certain matchups and take out the ones that are bad, right? So, again, Malevolent Hermit is really, really good against the more control-y decks. You get another threat on turn 2 that can now really interact with your opponent's cards very cheaply, and if they kill it, it can come back as a creature, and if they don't kill it, right, you're able to kind of dictate the pace of the match. Negate and Test the Talents for maybe, again, you don't need Essence Capture and you want other cards that interact with instants and sorceries. We also have a good thing to note, or an important card here is Tempted by the Oriq. One of the ways that opposing decks can really beat mono blue is by getting a threat early down that comes out before your counters, or that you can't really counter or interact with. So gaining control of it is a way to, okay, I pay 4 mana, I can steal something that's, it's not mana efficient, but you're able to get that tempo back by gaining control of something, and then okay, now your other spells can do stuff, and you can now afford to maybe counter something later, right? And so that's kind of how the deck functions a little bit. Hopefully it will play out well. It also really, really preys on a very specific type of metagame. More aggressive decks are going to be better against this deck, as opposed to maybe the more mid-range stuff that's been very popular with Wedding Announcement and the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, things that take a while to get going. You can really go in underneath them and win. So, let's play a couple matches and see how it goes. Alright, we'll play. This is so bad, everyone. So we'll mulligan. Is this somehow worse? I mean, not really. We're going to we still have a turn 1 play, and then hopefully our Delver flips, and we can keep Essence Capture up, and hopefully they're an aggressive deck that isn't going to interact with Delver on turn 1. If they do, we're not in a good spot. Alright. And like I said, now we're in business, right? If they have removal, we get to Fading Hope the Delver to replay it. If they have a creature here, we get to Essence Capture it and really increase our clock. Oh, great. And now we've drawn out of this very, very well. They might have a fateful... Oh, March. So let's slip out the... back. Here. I don't want to Fading Hope it yet. We can do that next turn if it goes very, very poorly for us, but I kind of want to attack with a 4-3, right? Instead of having to rebuy it. It also looks like our opponent is on a more control-y deck, which isn't too terrible, but this hand is not great against that, right? So we'll play a land and then say go. We really can't afford to draw another basic land. We need to draw interaction of some kind. Our opponent discarded a Farewell, which kind of confirms what we thought. That their deck is control. So these Essence Captures are not going to be wonderful for us. Okay. Slow Gurk the Overslime. Oh, well, there's our creature. Now I have no idea what our opponent is doing. And they just had a legend rule their Boseiju. So, whenever a land's put into your graveyard from anywhere, interesting. So, we need to Fading Hope it. We don't want to draw the card, and we get rid of the Disruption because they have so much mana. The Thirst for Discovery is kind of exactly what we want to draw. Now, if we draw basic lands, we can get rid of them. Doomscar. Okay, we've drawn almost half our lands. So again, you know, I would like to not draw any more. Another Essence Capture against the control deck. Maybe they'll Slow Gurk. I was afraid of the Wandering Emperor. Now we're in a really, really rough spot.
You're done.
Why couldn't they have Slow Gurked last turn?
Show them how we greet our enemies.
10 of our 18 cards have been land. And I think, what, we have maybe 20 lands in our deck besides the Disruption? Which, you know, happens sometimes.
Watch for intruders.
On our Mulligan too, but it's just unfortunate. Yeah, and all of these cards just aren't gonna help us. Memory Deluge. Okay, we can't do anything about that. We want to spell pierce the memory deluge.
Remember your training.
Hasima. Okay. If we draw an Ascendant Spirit, we might be able to get back here. But... because we can pump it up and start drawing a lot of cards if our opponent doesn't have any interaction, right?
Show them how we greet our enemies.
Wow. And here's all the creatures, too. If our opponent had the creatures earlier that we, instead of, like, maybe one or two of the removal, that we could have Essence captured, this game would be very different, but... we'll just concede. That was a very, very, very bad game. I think we want another Thirst for Discovery. Out of the Way can target Slogurk. I don't know if we want Dreamshackle Geist. We probably want Malevolent Hermit, though. And then I'm not the biggest fan of Essence Capture here. Maybe we can go down one Snare and add in a Negate. Okay. Interesting. So, I'm going to tap out on that turn. They have a Strict Proctor. I don't know what's going on now. What were the enter the battlefield abilities that they're stopping? Now, I didn't tap out there because I didn't want to. Right? Because I figured they might have some type of interaction that I wanted to be able to counter. Oh, wow. And that is interaction that I can't counter, so good job. So again, I think this time we'll go to at least make it a 2. Whenever I land... alright. For 1 blue, I think we could do this. Oh, we don't have the blue mana. Or we don't have all snow. Wow. Okay. So we have 1 activation of Hermit and an Essence Capture here. 3, we'll take it. I guess I can still be afraid of Iganjo, so I'm not gonna activate it again. And we'll just Delver here. And then during their end step, we can activate the Spirit. Also, on Otawara, is that the card? Can bounce it? Alright. We get a Snowland. No blocks. Let's attack. The Wandering Emperor. Opponent blocks, yes. So we have Spectral Adversary, which can phase out the Spirit and the Delver if our opponent does have a board wipe. And that's what I figured they had, which is a little upsetting. So there are some type of Slogger control deck, which is kind of cool. Five. We're at 4. Pump up. I'm gonna attack one. I think we attack with that one. Alright. And then go. So we get to Spectral Adversary, the Slogurk here. We have to hope our opponent doesn't play a land then Doomscar. Right? Farewell. Spell Pierce. Good. Kind of exactly what we wanted. Alright, out of the way I like now because it gets rid of the Slogurk. I think I kind of like Unlicensed Hearse. They seem to be doing some graveyard stuff. So maybe it's good. Keep. A turn 1 Delver. Let's see if we can follow it up with a turn 2 Flip. Faithful Mending. Yeah, I think I just want to Hearse and start getting rid of the graveyard now. I think that's probably going to be really, really good for us. And the Hearse is going to become a lethal threat relatively soon. And by soon, I mean a couple of turns. Ganjo, let's slip out the back. And then I can do that, I think. Then we can say go. Our opponent does not have green. They have the Evolving Wilds to probably find it. One of the Faithful Absence. We could... This can tell us what's in our opponent. Yeah. This is good. We get to see what's in our opponent's hand. We still have Malevolent Hermit to counter a removal spell. Yeah, Doomscar. Okay. Yeah, this is great. They do have the Boseiju, which can kill the Unlicensed Hearse, which is something to be aware of, but I don't hate us getting a land from that trade, necessarily. And they're foretelling it? Okay. opponent's going to go down to 7 here. And depending on what they do, right, Malevolent Hermit still counters that. Oh, I should have exiled stuff in response. But we also have Adversary, which can phase out both of these if we really, really want it. But that's fine. We get to Spectral Adversary. Auto, phase out a blocker, and then we get to win. So, GG. King Lear, let's go. Hello. The thirst is real. So, again, losing one of our 1-drops really, really messes up our deck, right? Because it just greatly decreases our clock. And one of the ways our deck wins, right, is by out-tempoing, making things happen quicker than our opponent can deal with. So this is just not very bueno. Because the longer the game goes, the worse our Spell Pierce becomes, the worse everything becomes. Okay. So what we can do is make sure the Goblin doesn't attack. And then what I want to do is the Spectral Adversary trick on the Fable, so it doesn't transform. Oh, so we get to slip out the back. That. Riveteer's Charm does nothing. Auto-pay, and then we target the Fable. It phases out, then it can't transform. Target creature doesn't untap. We can do that. Then we attack for 5. Go. We're fine with that. We can Spell Pierce the Charm. Tap target creature doesn't untap, we target the Goblin Shaman. We get to attack for 5. And then we say go. Is that a good game? It was. Alright. This is going to be... I don't know how to even begin sideboarding here. We know that they have a lot of They have a lot of everything. So... it's really hard to figure out what we want. They have aggressive creatures, but we really, like, Blood Tithe Harvester is a card that comes down on turn 2 and then can kill whatever we want. So we want to be able to interact with that. However, we also really want to be able to interact with Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So there's just a lot going on here, and none of it is very, very good. None of it. Maybe we do want Attempted by the Oriq, because we can gain control of maybe a Blood Tithe Harvester or stuff. That it is a lot of mana, but I don't know. Maybe it's better than the Snare. This is very, very interesting and very hard. Very, very hard. Our opponent also is playing first. So let's get rid of that. Alright, we'll keep... and hope they just don't have interaction for it. And that it flips. Oh. Fudge. Our opponent meat hooks for 1 here, we just lose. We did not see a meat hook, but they could very easily have one. I had to say it, right? Oh, wow. Okay. So we are in a really, really bad spot. In case you didn't know, we're only drawing lands. And notice how this is a very, very different game if the Delver flips on turn 1. Because not only does their Meat Hook Massacre not do anything, it will kill one devil, but we actually put a lot of pressure on them, and then we can hold up maybe our counter magic, right? But this is a very, very bad problem for us. So let's just... we have to lose. No use in wasting anyone's time there. Maybe the Tempted wasn't great and we just want to Negate. We probably do want Negate over Tempted. Or more counter magic. I don't know, it's hard. It's also hard not knowing their exact list and how aggro versus controlling they have the potential to be. And again, this is a problem. We need to really draw a land here. We also need them to not interact with our spirit. If they can blood... oh, duress? Okay. Duress we can kind of deal with. But we need to draw lands. Not good. I think I want to do this now. Because we need to be able to start attacking. If we don't do anything, we're just setting ourselves up to lose. So let's draw a land. Fudge. So this is unfortunate. Seeka's Chariot, that sucks a lot. Well, there's a land. Let's see what our opponent does here. Alright, we go to 10. Lol. We have to counter. And then we say go. We're going to Spectral Adversary to phase out the Chariot. Our opponent, it taps us out and gives our opponent so much opportunity to literally do anything to us. But we don't really have an option. And if we drew a third land earlier, this is a very, very different game, sadly. Riveteer Charm, okay. And then they kill it? Yep. G. We'll keep... I don't love it, but... I think we have to Ascendant on turn 1. The problem with this hand, right... Oh, there it goes. We can't do anything. I'm going to activate it now and attack for 2. I see this, and I think our opponent's aggressive, so I kind of want to deal the damage. And if they have a creature, our Essence Capture is going to be fantastic. Oh, they're Teamer. Well, unfortunate for us. We do have a double essence capture. However, I feel like they might not have a lot of creatures, which is a little no good for us. I think that's what they say in the business. Oh, wow. Would have loved to have Essence captured that. So we can Dreamshackle, go to combat, tap Galazeth, attack for 4, and idealistically our opponent will try and cast Goldspan Dragon here, and we can counter it. I have a feeling that might not happen. Alright, our opponent's at 1. We have a Fading Hope. And 2 Essence Captures. They get to loot, though. Maybe they tap out for the green Titan of Industry. We just want our opponent to tap out, is what we need. Or to play a big creature. Alright, we go up to 18. Titan of Industry, we get to Essence Capture. Voltage Surge, but we get to Fading Hope it in response. And that also means we get to pre-combat cast our Geist, which will tap the Prismari and attack for lethal. So I think the Essence Captures might be good now that I know what we're playing against. Probably want a Disdainful Stroke. Did they have any cheap green cards? No. So we don't want to out of the way. I don't think. Probably want Negate for Fable. And do we want Malevolent Hermit for Fable? Because if we do, what do we take out, right? And this is where I think we can take out the Thirst. And we're gonna go more aggressive. Oh, we can probably take out 2 Fables. Fable is really gonna be more... Oh, no. Fading Hope, I mean? I don't know. Interesting. No, I think we're fine here. We're fine here. No need to do any changes that big. Okay. Sorry. We need the Delver to flip or to not be killed. Those were both preferable to what just happened. So right now our opponent and I are kind of playing a game of cat and mouse. Because we can't really tap out for anything, because our opponent will just then do something bigger and better. So what I'm going to do here is I will cast the Spectral Adversary to at least make them have something. And also because we have a slip out the back as well, which can be used to counter something that they do. So they are what? Dealing 2 damage and creating a treasure token. They're gonna counter that, but then we can spell pierce the Prismari command, and they don't get a treasure or anything. And now we have Disdainful Stroke and Fading Hope. I think I want to Essence Capture that to counter there. Dragon Fire targeting the adversary. We can Fading Hope it to return it to our hand. We don't want that. I forgot. I honestly didn't realize it was choose up to 1. I was like, wait, is this going to stop us from attacking? We're going to negate the expressive iteration because we don't want our opponent to have a 2-for-1. They get to choose 2 cards, and that's very, very bad in our current position. They will do that. So we're going to Spectral Adversary to phase out our Geist, which will counter that. Oh, they're going to... Ooh, okay. So we pay the 1, our Geist is still gonna die. Alright. And then we just say go. Ooh. Wow. So now we're not in a good spot. And this is where maybe we waited a little too long to pull our first trigger on our first creature. Because we needed to maybe put a little more pressure earlier than what we did. We're gonna bounce that, so... I have a feeling we're not in a good spot. Oh, that's brutal. And our opponent will now get to copy it, and they get all the treasure, and then we just lose. Okay. That is not worth continuing to play. Alright. But I think that game kind of really showed how a 1-drop is so important. If we're not able to apply any pressure, right, we get into this situation where it's the late game, we've traded 1 for 1, and we're both kind of top decking, right? And then, oh, wow, our spell pierces don't do anything. Our Geist counterspell doesn't do anything. So the longer we wait, our deck also just becomes much, much, much worse. Now, there were a couple we had time to draw maybe a couple good things, like our Snow Spirit, which could have pumped up and drawn us more cards, right? But that just didn't happen. So again, we really need the Delver to flip. Now we needed to flip, but we also need to draw a land, so we're in a conundrum. At least we're dealing some damage. Let's slip out the back of that. But I think we want the Fading Hope for if our opponent casts the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, that we could then bounce. We're gonna cast it face down. I feel like our opponent does have another Dragonfire, but I don't think... What was my reasoning for that? I think I just really wanted to play a land there. And I think if we Dragon... If they Dragonfire and we counter it... Oh, no, that was probably wrong. We do need lands, though. I think it's just gone too late into the game where our opponent has so many things going on that we're just not in a good spot regardless. But maybe that's a lie, and that was probably one of the decisions that might have cost us the game. Though they did have another Prismari command, so... Okay. We're just gonna go for it and attack for 4. Fable. I think we can just say go. Because depending what our opponent does, right, we do have the Spectral Adversary to stop a lot of their things. Yeah, GG. Oh, thank God. Wow. Thank you for watching me play Mono Blue in Standard. This was a very, very fun and eye-opening experience. This deck is very, very hard. I felt like I was doing things wrong all the time, every single turn, and I love that. It is a deck that really, really helps you get better because it forces you to be much more knowledgeable about different turn sequences, what you can expect from your opponent's deck. Are they more likely to play a creature or a non-creature? And what are the benefits and consequences of you being wrong or right, right? So there's a lot of measuring going on and a lot of having to take a leap of faith in your different sequencing. And that's always a really, really good thing. So I would actually kind of recommend playing around with this deck. It can be very, very frustrating at times because you're really you can flood out very, very easily and you don't have really a lot of ways to mitigate that. And sometimes the cards line up where you just can't really do anything. You need to aggressively mulligan for creatures and whatnot. But I do think that there is a lot to learn here. And I would highly recommend picking it up. Because I definitely could have played a lot of these games differently and could have gone different ways. And I think I might be playing this deck for a little bit just to have a lot more fun with it and explore what it can do. I think it's really, really worth your time. So with that being said, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, you should like, comment, or subscribe. It's great ways to support me. You can also find me at twitch.tv/thenerdysteve. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are. Bye.